double-digit Ks.
We're busting ours to kick yours.
Fun to watch.
Minus 15.
Respect all, fear none.
Into the upper deck.
Intensity is not a curfew.
Oh, mercy.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Happy J2, everyone. Today is the beginning of a brand new international signing period for Major League Baseball, and it is a signing period that the Orioles will be major players in. Welcome into MASN All Access. I'm your host, Paul Mancano. Orioles general manager Mike Elias said this would be the biggest international signing period in Orioles history. We're just about 15 hours in, and it's already lived up to the hype. The O's have announced the signings of 27 international amateurs. Take a look at this picture tweeted out by the Baltimore Orioles earlier today. You can spot Elias and Kobe Perez, the senior director of international scouting, right in the middle of all those signings. It's a massive haul relative to the organization's previous forays into the international market. And the class is headlined by 3 players. All 3 are 16 years old, and all 3 are from the Dominican Republic. Take a look at them, beginning with Luis Gonzalez, the outfielder who turned 17 in November. He's 10 years younger than the Luis Gonzalez who's currently pitching for the Norfolk Tides. He's potentially got an impact bat and power from the left side of the plate, and he can play all 3 outfield positions. Next guy on that list is Lionel Sanchez, the shortstop. He turned 17 in December. He's got gap-to-gap power and smooth footwork and a solid arm over there at short. And finally, left-handed pitcher Luis Ortiz. He's 7 years younger than the Luis Ortiz who's up in Norfolk. He's got command already at age 16 over 3 pitches, and his fastball tops 90 miles an hour. His changeup and curveball are his other 2, and he's known for throwing quite a lot of strikes. Those are just 3 of the 27 announced signings by the Baltimore Orioles. Let's take a look at how they break down position-wise. 10 right-handed pitchers. For fans clamoring for an influx of arms into this organization, the Orioles went out and signed a bunch today. 5 of those guys are left-handed pitchers. And during the draft, you might remember Mike Elias showed a propensity to identify talent up the middle, and he did so again today. 6 shortstops on this list, 2 catchers, and finally 4 outfielders to round out the class. Take a look at what Mike Elias had to say in a statement released by the Orioles about this class. Quote, "This July 2 is a big day for our franchise. These younger players from all parts of Latin America will bolster our burgeoning farm system and jumpstart the continual flow of talent we are building. Today is only the beginning of our efforts as we will continue to sign more players throughout the 2019-2020 signing period. Our international scouting staff has already begun laying the groundwork for future classes." And now we bring in Steve Mileski of MASNsports.com, who is on the line. Steve, thanks so much for joining us. Now, this is quite a haul for the Orioles to pick up on the first day of the international signing period. How important is it for the Orioles to dive in with 27 signings on the first day?
Pretty huge, Paul. I mean, it's a big day in Birdland because, as advertised, Mike Elias said, this will be the biggest class ever for the Orioles, and it is. And in addition to signing 27 players, 24 of the players announced today are 16. I mean, so that's, to me, impressive. You're getting them at the youngest age you possibly can, and some of the players who will emerge over years, and it'll take several years for them to get through the Dominican Summer League, the Gulf Coast League, all the way through maybe to the majors. But you can see international players get to the majors, at earlier ages because they start earlier. So you start playing at 16, maybe you get to the bigs at 20, 21, 22, those that make it all the way.
The Orioles are really diving in with a lot of pitchers in this 27-man class so far. You talked to Kobe Perez about the importance of getting pitching and how the fact that they got into this market so late actually lent to them getting more pitching on this in this signing period.
It did. It was interesting how Kobe explained that to me. Mike Elias obviously was hired last November, Kobe in January, and at the time they came on board, most of the top prospects, the biggest bonus guys for today were spoken for, had agreements with teams, so they had to look at the best of the rest. And one thing Kobe said is sometimes pitchers that are 15, 16, 17, and Dominican Venezuela can come fast over a 3 or 4 or 6 month span. So they watch to see which pitchers maybe gained a little velocity or something took them a step forward in the short time they've been here, and they targeted some of those guys. So it kind of led them to select more pitchers today. I think it's 15 of the 27 are pitchers.
Steve, we had you in here on the day of the MLB draft back at the beginning of June. We talked about how important that day was in terms of the rebuild that the Orioles are constructing here. How important is today in that large macro view of the Orioles rebuild?
It's big, Paul, because an estimate anywhere from 25 to 30% of major league clubhouses are comprised of international players. There's 64 players going to the All-Star game announced in the last few days, and 15 are international players. So at one point, I think in the last year, the top 4 or 5 prospects in the sport were international players. So it's everywhere you look, and the Orioles just have not been competing on the same playing field with teams like the Yankees and Red Sox here for years, and now they are. And especially, Paul, it helps them compete because the way the rules are set up, there's a cap on the money you can spend here. It used to be the Yankees and Dodgers might spend $100 million for international players while other teams were spending $1 million or $2 million, and that can't happen anymore. The Orioles actually are in the group of teams that has the biggest allotment of money, nearly $6.5 million as today begins. So they can compete on even ground, and they eventually, Kobe Perez has told me, will be going after the big fish here. Some years they may be in with some of the biggest named guys and the guys who will command the highest bonuses. So that's exciting news.
For the Orioles fans that may not be as familiar with this entire process, and I'm sure there's a lot because the Orioles are new to this market, what is the next step for the kids that are signed today and in this coming international signing period? Where do they go? Do they go to the Dominican Academy, or do they go up through the levels of the organization?
Yeah, I believe most, if not all, will start in the Dominican Academy. The Orioles have an academy in Boca Chica in the Dominican Republic. And my understanding is that most of these players, in fact, I think all, will be signed and start their careers in games next year. They'll kind of get into the system this year. They'll see the academy. They'll learn some things the Orioles do there. And then they would play in games, I don't believe, until next year. So then the clock starts ticking on their careers and so forth. And sometimes we can see players who might play in the Dominican Summer League for 2 or 3 years before they come over to the United States. And then maybe then it's even at the lower level there, which might be the Gulf Coast League. And then eventually, finally, they make their way to full season ball, which for the Orioles, of course, starts as low as Delmarva, moves all the way through Norfolk, and then hopefully on to Baltimore. So a lot of steps for these kids today, many of which will not make it. We know that, but you still have to be playing in this pool. 30% of clubhouses, as we said, that's incredibly significant. So, the Oriole fans should be excited. You have Mike Elias, who is very well versed in international. Kobe Perez, who was director of Latin American scouting for the Cleveland Indians for the last 3 years, has signed some really good players over the years for a couple different organizations. So they dove into the deep end of the pool today, Paul, and they did it with 2 men heading the effort that are really, really good on the international front.
That's certainly encouraging for Orioles fans to hear. It is kind of crazy to think that Adley Rutschman was drafted as a future cornerstone, potentially, of this organization a few months ago, and he's 21 years old, and a lot of these kids are 16 as they enter the Orioles organization. Steve Molesky of MASNsports.com. Thank you so much, Steve, for calling in. We really appreciate it.
You got it, Paul.
Check out Steve's articles on MASNsports.com. He's got one up there today about the signings. You can learn more about these guys that were brought into the organization at age 16, beginning with Luis Gonzalez. Here's an excerpt from that article on MASNsports.com. 27 signings entering the Orioles organization. The Orioles have really only had one international signing of significance before today, and that was Jonathan Schoop, who was signed as a 16-year-old back in 2008 out of Curacao. Take a look at his journey through the Orioles organization. He hit every single stop along the way throughout the Orioles minor league system, and he played alongside Manny Machado for a good portion of his minor league career. He eventually made his major league debut at age 21 in 2013. He played 6 seasons for the O's, hit over 100 homers, and his O's journey ended with him being sent to the Brewers for a package that included Jonathan Villar at last year's trade deadline. Certainly a success story for the Orioles International Scouting Department. Now, Mike Elias has emphasized the importance of this day since he got the job back in November. And he's had an uphill battle as he's assembled his international scouting department, and the Orioles really hadn't had much success or much play in the international market. But he said he's already got his scouting department up and fully operational.
I mean, this was not a particularly active organization in that front. I think we had kind of a minimal operation that would sign players well after the July 2nd signing date, kind of lower dollar, older players relative to most international signings. And now we are pushing out as a full-fledged international scouting operation, and that could take some time. And as I've discussed, the way the market works down there, some of the behind-the-scenes advanced work that goes on has been done for 2 years now or more. So we don't have a full slate of players available to us. But that said, July 2nd's coming up. The international signing period will open, and it will be the largest international signing period, July 2nd, that the Orioles have ever had. So, we're doing a lot of work. Kobe Perez and I and his group that's growing, are doing a lot of work down there right now, and it's only going to increase. There are players that will be significant dollar investments that we really like. Are we going to anticipate us, having one of the top 7 or top 10 signing bonuses on July 2nd? No, but that's the kind of thing that takes a little more advanced work than either Kobe or I had in coming in here. But it's long term, that's not a concern for us, and we're going to be fully operational going forward. I feel terrific about where we've been able to take our department, getting Kobe in here, having a full July 2nd class, making some good signings. I wasn't sure that we'd be able to do that this quickly, and I think we have. We still have a lot of work to do. And we're not just racing against ourselves. There's a lot of teams that frankly, are ahead of us in this area, and so we're playing catch up a little bit. But I see no reason that within the next year or so we're not fully up to speed internationally. And it's a very big and important thing for us that is the case, because it's going to be a big part of our pipeline going forward. It's a fun challenge, and it's really scouting in its truest sense, because these guys are not only so young, but they're very raw in most cases, and they don't play a lot of organized games down there. So you're just watching them work out, and then they'll take live batting practice sometimes against other free agent pitchers, but it's not like they have high school leagues where they're wearing uniforms. And so it's starting to become a little bit more organized just because Major League Baseball's gotten more involved. And there's more money being invested in the market, but it's still kind of raw scouting, and it's fun for us as scouts to get involved in that market. But yeah, it's very easy to make mistakes, and you're having to make very big, very expensive decisions on very young kids, and then really you kind of have to wait 2 years and sign the guy, and it's tough.
Now, for those who don't fully understand all of the rules and implications of the international signing period, don't worry, we're new to it. Everybody who is covering the Orioles is new to this. So let's take a look at some of the rules guarding this international signing period. Now, today is just the beginning of the new signing period. Teams can sign eligible international amateurs starting today and up until June 15th, 2020. Now, each team starts with almost $5.5 million. How much extra money teams have is based on how large their market is, and it's the same scale that is used to determine the competitive balance round picks in the MLB draft. Now, the Orioles fall into the competitive balance round B category. The Orioles are one of 8 teams with $6,481,200. That is the most a team can have to start a signing period. Teams can also lose part of their slot allotment because of off-season signings. For example, the Dodgers, the Phillies, and the Nationals, they all have under $5 million because of the signings of A.J. Pollock, Bryce Harper, and Patrick Corbin, respectively. The O's can also add an additional 60% during this signing period via trade of their slot allotment. Now, who is eligible for the international signing period? Well, the player has to reside outside of the United States, Canada, or Puerto Rico and not be in high school. The player has to be at least 16 years old or will turn 16 prior to September 1st of the current period, which again runs until June 15th. Foreign professionals, they are exempt from the pool. So that includes players who are at least 25 years old and have played as a professional in a foreign league recognized by Major League Baseball for a minimum of 6 seasons. So an example there, as you may remember, Shohei Ohtani missed out on a big payday last offseason by signing with the Angels well before his 25th birthday, and he was considered an international amateur and was therefore subject to the rules of the international signing period, as opposed to just being a free agent that the Angels could sign. So let's look again at the top 3 guys that the Orioles are bringing in as part of this 27-man class just on the first day. Start with Luis Gonzalez, the outfielder. Again, he can play all 3 outfield positions. He's got power and potential impact bat from the left side. Lionel Sanchez, the shortstop. He's got gap-to-back gap power, smooth footwork, and a solid arm over there at shortstop. And Luis Ortiz, he's the left-handed pitcher who's got command over 3 pitches, a fastball that tops over 90 miles an hour, and he's also got a changeup and a curveball in his repertoire. Now, Kobe Perez is the director of international scouting for the Orioles. He is heading this entire international signing period for the O's along with Mike Elias, and I had a chance to talk to him over the phone while he is overseas in the middle of last week. He talked about the importance of this first signing period while he is at the helm. Take a look at our conversation. And now we welcome into MASN All Access on the phone, currently overseas, Kobe Perez, who is the Director of International Scouting for the Baltimore Orioles. Kobe, thank you so much for joining us. Now, you took over this job back on January 2nd, and before you took over, the Orioles really didn't have much of a history in terms of international scouting. How much of an uphill battle did you face as you revamped your own department?
Well, I think, most of the challenges were basically just letting, the whole industry know that we're now going to be players in the game. Earlier, Orioles were having trouble seeing the better players just because, we weren't spending money, so they preferred bringing them to other teams. So I think part of the challenge was just letting everyone know that we'll now be players, and I think we should have access to all players going forward.
You were a part of teams that were big players in terms of the international market before this. You were with the Cardinals, then the Phillies, and the Indians. How much did your work and your groundwork with those other teams, making connections and contacts, how much did that help when you took over with the Orioles?
It helped tremendously just because, working for those 3 clubs, I had a lot of dealings with different agents and trainers throughout Latin America and internationally. So, basically, these guys know who I am, and, as well as Mike, being that he also did some international work. So, those guys are familiar with the way we do business and are eager to show us the players.
And Mike Elias has talked about how this is a process that takes a good amount of time. The groundwork has to be laid oftentimes years in advance. For this particular signing period, when you took over in January, how much of your work was focused on this signing period beginning on July 2nd, and how much was focused on future classes?
I would say, working in international, you got to focus on the future classes as well as the current classes, because there's late bloomers that you got to stay on, and people that pop up, and kids coming out of Cuba that come on. So, you can't, take away from that, but you have to definitely focus on the future classes. For example, today, I just saw a kid that's eligible for 2021. So, my first report will be in there, and, all our information will start from now. But the way international works, you got to make sure you get that done quickly because he can come off the board.
And I think something that goes underrated in terms of the international scouting is just how many prospects and kids there are out there. Almost 1,000 signed every season. How do you keep track of that many prospects, and how does your office and your department keep track of the kids that are all over the world that you're attempting to sign?
Yeah, well, fortunately, our scouts do a good job of, trying to put together the information through reports and video to be able to, make better decisions once we compile all the information for the classes. I think it's not easy. It's very difficult. There's players all over the world, and we put in a lot of days and on the road. As you can tell, I'm overseas now, but the work it's difficult, and it's not easy to get all the information. But you do the best you can, and you get try and put together the best class you can.
Now, turning our attention to this particular signing period, the Orioles are one of 8 teams with almost $6.5 million to spend. And of course, your job is determining the best way to spend that money. For this particular class, did you see this as a class where your money is best spent on a few guys at the top and centering most of your money there? Or did you see it more as a class to spread the money out amongst numerous different prospects?
Yeah, I think in this class here, in the situation we were given coming in so late, the best chance that we had, the best opportunities that we felt was spreading the money around. We're going to sign about 30 guys here coming up on July 2nd. And, we feel really good about the players we're signing. But many of those high-end, top-ranked prospects have been spoken for, many of them for over a year now. So, the situation we were in, we ended up spreading out the money just because it gives us the best opportunity at the best class.
That makes sense. Now, Mike Elias said that this will be the largest international signing period in Orioles history. Do you agree with that assessment?
I think so. We've done a good job. Fortunately, Mike, knew some players that he liked when he was with Houston that were still available. I knew some players that I liked when I was with the Indians that were still available. And fortunately, we were able to move quickly and, discuss the chances of those players signing with us. And they ended up, they'll end up working out here. So that along with some pitching that we feel that, got better towards getting closer to this date, we were able to attack those guys pretty quickly.
Well, you mentioned that you were expecting to sign around 30 guys on July 2nd. Obviously, a lot of the parameters of these deals are hammered out in the months and weeks before July 2nd. But now that July 2nd is just days away, what are the final steps as you get ready to finalize and announce these deals?
Yeah, I mean, all these deals are always pending, physicals and all that. But other than that, basically, we feel good about the talent. We think they're healthy. MLB does background work on these guys. So we make sure we're getting the person that we think we're getting. So it's mostly all ready to go here on J2.
Awesome. And with this opportunity being in front of you, is in terms of having that chance to bring in the largest international signing class that the Orioles have ever had, how exciting is that for you personally to be a part of something that is really getting started on a big scale this year?
I'm very excited. For the organization, for myself, and for the rest of our player development, because we're able to bring in some talent to help our farm system here. We're signing a lot of guys, and a lot of them will boost our system rankings in the future, and I think hopefully some of these guys can help us in the major league sooner rather than later. Even though we know that we're signing these kids so young that it's going to definitely take some time before they set foot in Oriole Park.
Well, your excitement is matched by Orioles fans as well. They've been looking forward to July 2nd for quite some time, and pretty much since you took over on January 2nd. So we really appreciate you, Kobe Perez, joining us, Senior Director of International Scouting with the Baltimore Orioles. Thanks for your time.
Thanks for having me.
So that's what Kobe Perez had to say last week. Here's what he had to say today about the Orioles beginning of their signings in the international signing period. Quote, "We are excited about the round of talent we were able to bring in this first group of signings. Everyone in the organization hit the ground running after our department was put together, and it's a testament to their hard work that we were able to sign the quality group of players joining us today. We look forward to continuing to grow the relationships we've established in the Dominican Republic and other countries for years to come." The Orioles did dip heavily into that Dominican Republic market, a deep talent pool there, and there are some other countries on that list. Take a look at the breakdown of where the Orioles signed these 27 players. The majority, 16 of them, came from the DR, 8 came from Venezuela, and then 1 each from Aruba, the Bahamas, and Colombia. The Orioles gathering talent from several different countries. Now, like many other teams, the Orioles have a baseball academy down in the Dominican Republic, and the Dominican Summer League consists of 45 teams in 6 divisions playing a regular season from June 1st through August 24th with a postseason to follow. The Orioles are one of 14 major league teams that has 2 affiliate teams in the Dominican Summer League, and both teams are based outside of the Baseball City complex in Boca Chica. Felipe Alou Jr. heads the efforts down in the Dominican Republic for the Orioles, and he's pretty excited about working with this new Orioles front office headed by Mike Elias.
Well, baseball is a big part of our culture. Everybody's known players like, Tony Fernandez and George Bell, and not to mention the Alou family and stuff. So baseball, it is a big resource, not only for Jay's second kids, but, other kids that have that dream of becoming professional ball players. Over the last, few years now, Jay too means a lot to these families. It's having a young, talented kid given the opportunity to become a professional. It's been a huge holiday. Teams are getting more and more involved and committed, and I'm glad that this year the Orioles are doing that. I think it's a great step. It's a huge step towards what we want to build, to what our ownership and Mike Elias is trying to build. Great commitment. I'm really excited to be part of it, and really can't wait till July 2nd. I would say from our scouting department standpoint, you see him out there, you see him busy, you see him coming in and out. I have a good relationship with Kobe for a long time now. It's always been a pleasure, to run into him and now work with him. So, and I know they're engaged, they're engaged. Mike's been around a couple times already. That means a lot. That means he really believes in this market. So, very excited for our scouting department, and same time, our player development scouting, because hopefully we're going to get that talent coming in pretty soon, and hopefully you see him in Baltimore soon as well.
Now, we knew the Orioles were not going to be major players for some of the top names on the international market, at least not this signing period, just given how late they were to enter the fray. But where did some of those guys end up? Take a look at the top 5 guys, according to Baseball America, and where they are expected to sign either today or in the coming weeks. Jason Dominguez, the top guy, an outfielder, he goes to the already talent-laden New York Yankees. That is going to be a guy to keep your eye on for years to come in that organization. And then Robert Passon on the second level there, followed by Bayron Lora, Luis Rodriguez, and Eric Pena. All 5 of these guys are 16 years old. The top 3 guys there from the Dominican Republic. Dominguez, a switch hitter. He throws right. He's got at least a 55 grade in every category: hit, power, run, arm, and field. That's pretty good for a prospect, according to scouts. So top 5 guys headed to different areas of Major League Baseball. One day, the Orioles will be involved in getting the top 5 guys in terms of the international market. But for today, they bring in quite a talented class of 27 international free agents, including 3 16-year-olds to top off the class. A big first step for the Orioles as they head into the international market. That just about does it for MASN All Access. I'm your host, Paul Mancano. Thanks to Kobe Perez for calling in, Steve Molesky for calling in, Olivia Witherite, Bobby Blanco, Brendan Mortensen, Cam Hasbrook, and Amy Jennings for all their hard work behind the scenes. Don't forget, tune in to Orioles and Rays tonight, starting at 6:30 on MASN. That's when O's Extra comes your way. Keep an eye on MASNsports.com. Steve Molesky has you covered for the entire Orioles international market signings. See you later.